The winner of the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize was finally announced, and this year's honoree is Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. After the announcement was made, one of my friends asked me if I was disappointed because they didn't choose Donald Trump for the award instead. It was a fairly obvious question to ask me, but then I realized I didn't actually know how to answer the question. Pablo el Molinero. Whether the Nobel Prize Committee would ever even consider giving the Peace Prize to Donald Trump was a topic for international speculation. So the first question should be, does he deserve it? I'm willing to concede that some of Trump's claims of stopping wars could be questioned, but others are completely legitimate. Trump did mediate an agreement to cease hostilities between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met in the White House on August 8th to initial an agreement and to sign a joint declaration aimed at ending a conflict which dates back to 1988. Trump also got a sweet deal for the U.S. by including something called the Trip Corridor into the deal. This gives the United States an exclusive 99-year lease on a trade route that excludes Russian and Iranian involvement. This was all negotiated right under Putin's nose. Trump did also negotiate a peace deal between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. President Felix Tshisekedi of the Congo and President Paul Kagame of Rwanda also met with Trump in the Oval Office to declare that a peace agreement had been made. To be sure, there are some deep issues still to be worked out in both of these conflicts, especially with regard to the fighting in Africa. But Donald Trump's influence in bringing these parties to the table is undeniable. Trump also negotiated the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Of course, this peacemaking initiative has to be looked at in the context of how the events unfolded. On June 13th, Israel began a relentless air campaign on Iran's nuclear facilities, military sites, and regime infrastructure. 9 days later, the United States joined in and bombed 3 of those nuclear facilities. To add more background to what led up to those events, Trump fairly begged Iran to negotiate some kind of deal with the West. He sent very kind letters to the Ayatollah and even offered to meet with him in person. He also offered third-party negotiations with the mullahs, but they were not interested. I thought his message was pretty consistent. Let's stop this wasteful fighting, let's all get rich, and let's eat at McDonald's. The unhappy fact is that the options for peace with Iran are limited when the demands of that country include the complete capitulation of the world's most powerful nation and the genocide of an entire race of people. Somehow, it just seems unlikely that it's going to work out on those terms. So, in negotiating that ceasefire, Iran was clearly in a vulnerable position. But Trump did get extremely angry at Israel when, with only 12 hours left before the ceasefire was to begin, the IDF carried out a final brutal bombing campaign against the Iranian forces. This led to Trump letting out a loud and intentional F-bomb live on national television.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Please, don't you get angry. Like this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you don't want to be tossing F-bombs around your house, smash that bell to be notified when we drop new content so that you never risk missing an episode of Pablo el Molinero. At any rate, this actually points out an important irony to the whole world peace prospect, and that's Israel's role in shaping the conditions which even put the current situation into play. The possibility of peace in that part of the world depends almost entirely on some kind of agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. Much of the neighboring Arab world seems ready to make peace with Israel once that issue gets resolved. It must be conceded that there are fanatics on both sides of this conflict who simply do not want peace. On November 4, 1995, then Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated while attending a rally in support of the Oslo Accords, which was a peace initiative between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The assailant, who shall remain nameless here, was an Israeli law student and ultranationalist who opposed any plan for peace at all. It was a different take on the whole from the river to the sea concept. Hamas, who is supported by Iran, has steadfastly refused to consider any accommodation with Israel whatsoever. One may condemn Israel for what they consider to be the unjustified scope of the retaliation on Hamas in the Gaza, but the unprovoked attack that killed 1,200 Israeli citizens on October 7, 2023, along with the kidnapping of some 250 hostages, certainly meets the definition of a war crime as described in the Geneva Convention. Johnny Joey Jones is a military analyst at Fox News and former Marine bomb technician who lost both of his legs to an IED in 2010 while serving in Afghanistan. Once, when asked about the current conflict, I heard him say, "War is a crime." That statement struck me as revealing a deeper truth about this conflict and about war in general. You can pick sides, but there can be no doubt. Crimes are committed all around. Crimes are likely to be committed all around in any war because war itself is a crime. Mr. Jones' statement shall live forever with me. Frankly, my opinion is that Hamas started this war, and maybe they miscalculated the consequences, but the consequences are theirs to own. Not only did they know that many Palestinian civilians, including women and children, were going to be killed, they counted on it. As far as I'm concerned, Hamas can go straight to hell. My overall point about Israel is that crippling Iran's ability to foment terrorism in the region, including the detesticulation of Hezbollah and Lebanon, and the subsequent near obliteration of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, has brought the world and Donald Trump to a point where we can actually imagine that maybe there is a deal to be made. Trump's proposal includes a spectacular rebuilding of the Gaza, mostly from private investment. The message is once again, let's stop all this foolishness, save a lot of lives, and make a few shekels for everyone involved. I don't want to take anything away from Maria Corina Machado, who was the actual winner of the Nobel Prize this year. She is most certainly a very brave woman. She managed to coalesce the diverse factions of the Venezuelan opposition into a single voice at great risk to life and limb, and she is still in hiding somewhere in that country. In doing so, she managed to focus greater attention from the world to the cause of freedom in Venezuela. Ms. Machado dedicated her prize to Donald Trump. Why, you might ask? Well, in July of 2024, the Venezuelan opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez won the presidential election with almost 70% of the total votes. Ms. Machado was barred from running, but nonetheless was the face of the opposition. The anti-government forces won the election by 40% and still didn't come remotely close to ridding themselves of the Maduro regime. Anyway, the thing is, Ms. Machado recognizes that at this point, the last best chance Venezuela has to rid themselves of Nicolas Maduro lies with Donald Trump, who is actively working to make that happen. Venezuela certainly isn't going to get any help from the likes of President Lula da Silva of Brazil, or President Petro of Colombia, or President Sheinbaum of Mexico. Donald Trump is, for the foreseeable future, Venezuela's best, if not the only remaining hope for it to move on from the disaster of the Chavista movement. Even if that happens, the short and midterm prospects for Venezuela remain pretty dim. I go into this situation in greater detail in my video, Blowing Up Venezuela, which is available for free on the Pablo El Molinero channel on YouTube. Anyway, the question remains, does Donald Trump deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? If he somehow manages to pull off a lasting peace in the Middle East, Trump probably should be considered for sainthood. It's still a long way off, and as of this writing, I'll admit that I'm nervous. Phase 1 of the agreement hasn't actually been completed. No hostages have been released, but everyone remains cautiously optimistic. A fair evaluation of Donald Trump may not be possible by contemporary historians. In the view of many leaders of American academia, Trump will always be a racist, fascist homophobe whose dreams of world domination leave him completely out of any consideration for any kind of positive recognition. The view of these people will be that if the deal in Gaza falls apart, it will be Trump's fault. If it succeeds and peace is finally achieved in the Middle East, then someone else, probably Obama or Biden, are the ones who really did it. Does Donald Trump want statues of himself in every park and plaza in the world? Does he want schools and bridges and monuments and even cities named after him? Yeah, sure. That's just who he is. He likes to put his name on stuff, and he'll probably get some of those honors. I believe that Trump is truly a transformational president, but it shall be the task of future historians who will be left to make the final judgment as to his effect on the world. Trump probably did himself no favors with the loud campaign pushing for his consideration of the Nobel Prize. Every year there are crusades by interested factions to promote their candidate for that honor. Trump's was just a tiny bit more overt than others. So, do I think that Donald John Trump should have won the 2025 Nobel Prize for Peace? Yeah, probably. But at this point, I really don't give a shit. This is Pablo El Molinero.